Again for this time that you give us to study the portion of the word. Father, thank you for the words of Jeremiah, Father, because he's been for us to study, that we know that, Father, that you're just your vessel, and that you're the one speaking the words, Father, even today. In Jesus' name, amen. 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 Like I said, this will come, and I think, and we'll get a little more further into it. I think this is going back and forth. When the exiles from Babylon were returned, and then when we come in Jesus' return, and then he reestablishes his nation. And it's kind of, I think, back and forth, kind of hard to, well, it was for me, kind of keep in mind, okay, this is when they were exiled, it's back, and this is when Christ will return and set up his kingdom. And but it's relevant. If it wasn't relevant to study this, God wouldn't have put it in there. You know, everybody, I believe everybody knows, of course, before I like to watch the Western reruns. Oh, yeah. Well, I think it started during COVID when you couldn't go anywhere, and every time you turned on the TV, that was all it was about. I got tired of watching that. And so I started recording the old Westerns. Keith gave me a big old box of Westerns, and I thought I had to live to 100 to be able to watch all of them. And, but one thing common about the old Westerns, there's always a bad guy and a good guy. And in the end, the good guys always win. And no matter how evil or how bad the bad guys are, justice will come. You know, as humans, we desire to see justice done, and the bad ones pay for their evil deeds. Sometimes I think we like to relish in it and listen and think, God, when are you going to, the judgment going to come down on them? But you know, maybe I shouldn't admit it, but you know, like going back to Westerns and the bad guys and the good guys and all this, you know, but I really enjoy it when Mac Dillon backhands somebody or what kiss a lips. You know, what? Yeah, yes, finally got what he deserved.
That's why a lot of the ones I like to watch on Hallmark, they're all the same.
Yeah, they're all the same. Yeah. How many remember watching the Karate Kid? when he finally whipped that bully and everything, I think we all just shouted and hollered, you know, in glee when he finally did. But you know, as we look at today's lesson, and the evilness of Babylon, they're finally getting what they deserve, you might say. God's justice is being pronounced on them. You know, in Jeremiah 46:1 through 52:43, we read of God's judgment on several nations that are oppressed Israel and Judah in one way or another. And the list it gives, where Jeremiah first announced Egypt's judgment, in which Nebuchadnezzar would come and defeat Egypt and take them into exile. Jeremiah then announced judgment on the Philistines in Moab, but the Lord promised to restore Moab. God would then send the Ammonites and their god Milcom into exile. God would then pronounce judgment on Edom, and those who witnessed his judgment would compare it to Sodom and Gomorrah. God would bring judgment on Syria, Kedar, Hazar, the nomadic tribe, who had threatened God's people. Elam earned God's judgment, though it would also be restored. Last but not least, God promised judgment on Babylon, in which the nation would be totally destroyed. Chapters 50 and 51 is one of an extended unit, and its theme is that Babylon will be destroyed in Jeremiah 51 through 3. In other words, after reading that, you know, the lesson is on chapter 50, the verses there, but we get a chance to go ahead and read 51, because that's the continuation of God's judgment on Babylon. So we're getting our lesson text today. Someone read now Jeremiah 50:11 through 16.
Because you are glad, because you rejoice, O ye destroyers of my heritage, because ye are grown fat as the temperate grass, and bellow as bulls, your mother shall be sore confounded, she that bare you shall be ashamed. Behold, the innermost of the nations shall be a wilderness, a dry land and a desert. Because of the wrath of the Lord, it shall not be inhabited, but it shall be wholly desolate. Every one that goeth by Babylon shall be astonished and hisseth at all her plagues. Put yourselves in array against Babylon round about, all ye that bend the bow. Shoot at her, spare no arrows, for she hath sinned against the Lord. Shout against her about. She hath given her hand, her foundations are fallen, her walls are thrown down, for it is the vengeance of the Lord. Take vengeance upon her, as she hath done, do unto her. Cut off the sword from Babylon, and him that handleth the sickle at the time of harvest. For fear of the oppressing sword, they shall turn every one to his people, and they shall flee every one to his own land.
Wow, that's right. I'm thinking here, and I've said it before, don't misinterpret me. I've said, sometimes we wonder, God, when are you going to take your vengeance out? And I've said it tongue in cheek now. Remember, I've said, God, I know vengeance is going to come on them, but I sure would like to watch. Which, that's not the attitude. But Babylon, under the leadership of King Nebuchadnezzar, Babylonia and the city of Babylon began to flourish. In other words, there's two eras of Babylon flourishing, and one it didn't last very long. And then the second time that this Nebuchadnezzar, the city Babylon began to flourish. Now, after his death, his son Nebuchadnezzar took the throne and became the most powerful king in the region of Mesopotamia. What they say now, probably modern day Iraq, in that area there. But under Nebuchadnezzar, Judah was invaded by the Nebuchadnezzar's army, destroying the temple, slaughtering many Jews, and taking others into exile in Babylon. We just finished our study on Daniel. When Nebuchadnezzar came and invaded and took what we kind of say the choice was back. Ones that were educated well, and that was Daniel and Meshach, Abednego. I can't say it now. Meshach. There we go. Thank you. What? Okay. Yeah. All right. But God used Nebuchadnezzar as an instrument to punish Judah for his disobedience to him. In other words, they thought they were just doing something different, but God used them as an instrument. Judah had disobeyed God. They taken up idols, worshiping idols, and so forth. So God said his judgment really would come down on Judah. So now God's judgment is going to fall on Babylon for the treatment of his people. Verse 11 states, because you are glad, because you are jubilant, the New American Standard depicts the Babylonians' haughty or prideful attitude. They believe nothing can touch us. We're the most powerful nation in the known world. No one can come against us. We are to prove that. And nothing's going to happen to us. But the Lord further said they were destroyers, plunderers of my heritage. Now, heritage indicates God's special relationship with his people. The Babylonians saw Judah as just another conquest. People they could rule, but God would avenge his people. Jeremiah used two examples from the animal world that describe being driven by appetites and passion. A young cow or a heifer was driven by its appetite, and when it had an abundance of food available, it ate ravenously. There's times any ranch and everything, maybe you have a field of corn or whatever, and somebody forgets to close the gate, and the cows get in there and they destroy half of it because they're just out there gorging. But you have to keep, as a cattle feed in the barn, you have to keep it away from the cattle, because if they got into it, the cows, they'll eat till they kill themselves. Now, we talk about donkeys, they're about the only ones they'll eat till they're full and quit. But donkeys, horses, whatever, they'll just, what we call flounder. And they'll just eat till they can't hold anymore, like I said to them. If there's enough left, they'll kill themselves. But Bellow's bulls further symbolize Babylon's power and confidence. Now, the Christian Standard Bible and New American uses the phrase "nay stallions." In other words, what they're saying is, look at me, I'm number one. They out there they're neighing, and all these mares like me. They want me. And so Jeremiah described Babylon's punishment as a formerly proud mother who would now be utterly humiliated and put to shame. You know, I picture here that Babylon had humiliated and put their enemies to shame at the table of turmoil. I'm also thinking, of a proud mother. When that baby is born and they're proud and they're so proud of it and they nurture it and grow, and then when it grows up, they turn it. They bring shame to their nation, bring shame to their mother because of the life that they've chosen and because of their sinful actions. Now, the empire, which had formerly ruled the known world, would now become a desolation. Every bit of her. They're going to be wiped out. Don't ever think or boast that we're so powerful in the world later that God can't take us down overnight. It can happen overnight. We'll see later that's what happened to Babylon. And I think leaders in some of the boast that we're not the most powerful army, we're the most powerful nation, and nothing can happen to us.
I think of the Titanic before the
Yeah. It was unsinkable.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Right.
I wouldn't want to get on there and say that.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. What's the saying? Engineers and everything built the Titanic, and the man and his sons, amateurs, built the ark. So, but if you ever get a chance, go to Kentucky and see the ark. I mean, it's something to see. It's just overwhelming. You just can't imagine that Moses and his sons built that. It took a few years, but they did it. But we'll see later on in the lesson that God did that very thing to Babylon. They were destroyed overnight. Now, because of God's wrath, the empire which had formerly ruled the world will now become a desolation. Every bit of it. Those who had formerly known Babylon's strength and glory will now witness her humiliation and shame. Jeremiah states that those that passed by and witnessed the destruction of Babylon would hiss. Now, the word hiss signifies derision or disrespect, ridicule, or even boo. How many of us been to a ball game or something, football, and we booed? or something else, we booed. We hissed. Hissed is kind of a word that's just kind of lost now. We don't use anymore. But I think we still probably sometimes not should, but we use the word we boo.
You see it in more Westerns.
Yeah, no more Westerns, right. Disrespect and ridicule, yes. But God then instructed Babylon's enemies to draw up their battle lines on every side. Armies would first surround the cities, cut off the city's water supply and then the food. This was a tactic back then. They would surround the city. They would cut off their water, cut off their food. A lot of times they would just starve them out. And they would build scaffolding where archers could stand and shoot down into the city. They would ram the gates and then enter the city and take the people captive. I was reading on Genghis Khan, how he destroyed some cities. He would take people that had some disease and catapult them over the walls. And biological warfare. Yes.
They would also they collect all the urine and feces of pots and do the same.
Yeah.
Which spreads disease.
Yeah. Who was it? Who was the president when it said war is hell? And I want to say that was Churchill. I think it was Roosevelt. Anyway, it's not pretty. And when you set out to win, most of them are going to do what it takes to win. I can remember, and of course, it was they gassed. I knew a man here in town that was gassed during World War I. What is it called? That's what you need to call it. Well, that was Geneva Convention. That was ruled. That was cruel. And still do it, yeah. But he had a real hard time talking. And yeah, I remember him being gassed. And well, they said he was gassed during World War I. But God, but then they would ram the gates in and take the people captive. God then instructed invaders to shout against, in other words, raise your battle cry to the Babylonians. In other words, we have won. We have won the victory. Jeremiah used vivid terms to illustrate Babylon's defeat. First, the city had given herself up. Second, her walls had been torn down. The first line of defense of the city were its walls and its fence towers. And the walls collapsed. The battle was almost over. We always think of reminding the walls of Jericho. When the walls went down, the battle, you might say, was over. The prophet encouraged Babylon's invaders to take vengeance upon them. The word vengeance suggests getting even and correcting injustices. In other words, their time had come. They had taken vengeance. They had been cruel to the ones they had captured, inhumane times, but vengeance had now come upon Babylon. Kind of like vengeance, like I said, remember I'm talking about the old Westerns. There was one the other day I was watching. This guy didn't break any law, but he was mean and cruel and everything. So at the end, that invited him out back. It took vengeance out of him. But vengeance was put upon Babylon. Now Babylon would experience the pain she had inflicted on others. This guy just saying that he inflicted the pain on this guy, inflicted pain on others. But cut off the sword from Babylon and the one who wields the sickle at the time of harvest. This highlighted Babylon's coming of agriculture and devastation. The absence or death of the sower and the harvesters meant agriculture had ceased. Food supply. When you take the food supply away, that's pretty much it. And the crops and everything was destroyed. Disaster would result to the sword of the oppressor. Exiles would find this as an opportunity to return to their own people and escape their captivity to their own land. Remember when we studied the book of Daniel? Chapter 5, where Belshazzar, the son of Nebuchadnezzar, he threw a drunken party. In other words, they were drinking wine and everything out of the cups, the gold cups that were taken from the temple. And then he saw handwriting on the wall. He called all the king's wise men, all the magicians and everything, but none could interpret this writing. The queen, the queen, she had a good memory. Okay. When you look up Daniel 7, 26 through 28, I was going to have books to you. But anyway, he saw the handwriting on the wall. And I thought, well, the queen, she was the only one that remembered. She had a good memory. Told the king, don't be distressed. There is a man appointed chief of the Chaldeans by your father Nebuchadnezzar, named Daniel. Daniel was brought in before the king. Long story short, Daniel told the king that even the nations would fall to the Medes and Persians. And you got it. Daniel 7, 26 through 28.
But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominion shall serve and obey him. Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me, and my countenance changed in me, but I count the matter in my heart.
Okay, I might have gave you the wrong one. It's the 3 words. Help me.
Handwriting on the wall?
Yeah, the handwriting. Yeah, right. In other words, the last of men you have found one
Weighed and found one thing that judgment this night.
this night judgment will be upon you. So, but that's a good one too. But you know, what?
I was wondering why that didn't seem like it fit.
Yeah, I wrote the wrong one down anyway.
We need
We need to hear it. That's right. God wanted us to hear it. But you know, like a long story short, Daniel told the king that his precious father was born with the leads and persons. Now, I thought it was in the scripture. I couldn't find it. But said historians and studies have said that night, Belshazzar was slain. They said the Medes and Persians, they come in there, changed the Euphrates River ran through there. It ran under the wall. And they changed the course of the river. And while they were having their hangover and drinking everything, all the armies marched under the wall. The aqueduct never defeated them and never fired a shot. And you go back there and we think we're so strong that
Drunk party.
yeah, drunk and partying, probably hangovers and all that. But they marched in there and took Babylon. Like I said, never fired an arrow. and took it. You know, like I said earlier, you know, we could lose overnight. We could lose overnight. And just keep thinking of Babylon boasting how strong they were and no one could touch them. Someone read now verses 17 through 20.
Israel is a stray lamb, chased by lions. The first who devoured him was the king of Assyria. The last who crushed his bones was King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. Therefore, this is what the Lord of armies, the God of Israel, says. I'm about to punish the king of Babylon and his land just as I punished the king of Assyria. I will return Israel to his grazing land, and he will feed on Carmel and Bashan. He will be satisfied in the hill country of Ephraim and Gilead. In those days and at the time, this is the Lord's declaration. One will search for Israel's iniquity, but there will be none, and for Judah's sins, but there will not be found. For I will forgive those I have as a remedy.
Okay, Daniel 5, 26 through 28. This is the interpretation of the message. Meaning, God has numbered your kingdom and put an end to it. Jacob, you have been weighed on the scales and found deficient, or come up short. Paris, your kingdom has been divided and given over to the Medes and Persians, and Belshazzar gave orders and they clothed their members in you found them.
But the reward was worthless.
Yeah, the reward
30
was
minutes
worthless.
to come to the
Yes, yes. And I think sometimes, of course, you know, we know and read that Babylon's day was coming. But I think the icing on the cake, what did it was in the drinking from the vessels that were taken from the temple. So I don't, I think that was the final straw, I think. That was just making a mockery, you might say, of God.
Still sacrilegious.
It's still sacrilegious, yes. From 17 through 20, Jeremiah reminded the people that God would punish Babylon just as he had punished Assyria. God would also lead his faithful people to return to the promised land. The sins of his people would be wiped clean, never to be found. Jeremiah used the imagery of Israel as scattered sheep being driven away by the lions. In most of the Jews' history, they faced powerful enemies and had little chance against his oppressors. Jeremiah named Assyria as the first devoured God's people. In 721 BC, the Assyrians conquered Samaria. Samaria, the capital of Israel's northern kingdom, and reported much of the population of the other region. We know the story there. There's not one good king. And I can't remember the
Jeroboam.
Jeroboam. You know, he was the first king of Israel, northern kingdom.
He had his chance too.
He had his chance, yes. But what did he do? He didn't want them going down to Jerusalem to worship and stand there, so he set up places of worship in Israel. and even appointed people as priests who were not priests. And so that was the beginning of the end right there. So as the Assyrians imported foreigners to live in the land, the northern kingdom was never reestablished. Note there was not one good king to Israel. Not one. Yeah, 19 bad. Next, the Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar had conquered the southern kingdom and broken his bones. You know, I notice a point here, and I don't know if there's anything to this or any significance. But notice, usually when it refers to Israel, they use the feminine. But here it says his. And speaking of Israel and Judah here, that's referred to as his. Now, I don't know if there's any significance to that, but it says here, I don't know what some of the other translations may say, but it says it's broken his bones. I don't know what the verse. One's the Christian Standard, another's King James, I think. But anyway, there may not be any significance. Yeah, he is. Yeah. But like I said, generally when we spoke of Israel or Judah, the God's people, it was I don't know if there's any significance or not, but that is kind of made me wonder. The people had seen what had happened to Israel, but failed to listen to the abominations of God. Judah had every chance in the world. They saw what had happened to Israel. The Assyrians come in there and just wiped them out, took them and brought people of other nations into Israel. But we just never learned. We don't learn about people's mistakes. We got to find out ourselves. But we say, well, and we find the question, why couldn't Judah learn? But are we just as bad? We don't learn from those mistakes. So in turn, Nebuchadnezzar conquered Jerusalem, burned the city and his temple, and deported much of the population to Babylon. The Lord of the armies, the God of Israel, declared he was about to punish the king of Babylon and his land, just as he had previously punished the king of Assyria. I think coming around 200 years. I didn't figure that again, the dates is 130, 135. But I always thought it was around 100, maybe 200, I don't know. But, they had time to figure it out. In other words, Judah did, that there was about 200 years difference somewhere that Israel was defeated by the Assyrians before Babylon came into Judah and defeated them. But the Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar and his son Nebuchadnezzar conquered the Assyrian Empire. I didn't know that. They had conquered the Assyrian Empire too. Prior to their punishment, God's punishment on Judah, on Israel, was weeded out by the Babylonians.
They punished Assyria.
Yeah.
They should have got a decade note of that.
Right, they should have taken note. But even though they probably reveled in their victory, God used them as his instrument to defeat Assyria, and now they were no more. But what was done to Assyria was about to be done to Babylon. Verse 19, God would act as the great shepherd. I will bring Israel back to his pasture. What? It's in the car. Here. If I can find it. Somewhere here. Okay. I don't know if that's the right number I got over there. Okay. Well, like I said, even though they probably reveled in their victory, God used them as his instrument to defeat Assyria. And now they were no more. So what was done to Assyria was about to be done to Babylon. What goes around comes around. Like I said, I am a teacher. I said experience is the best teacher. In some cases, not everything. But I had to learn from other people's mistakes too. That's a good way of
Well,
learning.
another interesting thing is back up to the last thing that I asked everybody, Hezekiah,
Yes.
he was sick. Babylon came in just to give some well wishes, that he was arrogant. Hezekiah, he should remember.
Oh yeah, here's everything.
I've been stuck in the mind for a long time. I think they wrote it down for Adams.
Yeah.
These people really think that they're rich.
Yeah. And someone said, you did what?
And I tell you, he started, what did you do?
Yeah, what you do?
Show everything.
All of our creatures.
Bragging and shit.
Right, yeah. Look what we got. And, but, you know, we're kind of like that too. Look at all our masks. Everything else.
Example,
Yes.
example after example.
Yes. I knew a lady that, she liked to, I mean, whatever she bought, it had to be the best. And, her clothes, furniture, house, everything, and then she had to tell everybody about it. How much she had to spend on that. And, I'm kind of like mother. Mother said, don't buy it unless it's on sale. You know? I said, well, you gotta have the money when it's on sale. But what was done to Assyria was about to done to Babylon. Verse 19, God would act as a great shepherd. I will bring Israel back to its pasture. Just as he would destroy the nation of Babylon, God would bring his scattered and defeated flock to lush pasture land on the hillsides of Carmel, in Bashan, in the hills of Ephraim and Gilead. Now, Carmel was a place of natural springs, a place of water, abundant water. Bashan was located in what is now the Golan Heights. They're going to get that back someday. Jews will.
It's interesting because the Carmel was in the south of Bashan.
Yeah, right.
So Carmel would have been Judah, Bashan actually would have been Israel.
Yeah, yes. Ephraim, it refers to the northern kingdom. Usually a lot of times when they speak about Ephraim, it's referring, that's one of the tribes, one of the 12 tribes, but it's usually referring to Israel, the nation of Israel. And Gilead is known for its spices and balm with its healing qualities. So in those days and in that time, highlights the time of God's people restoration. Now, commentators, here's where I think we look at a different aspect of this, or different commentators generally believe this promise had a future messianic fulfillment when Christ returns. And I tend to believe that. Because they've still not claimed or received all the land that God has promised to Abraham. And so until that time comes, I believe when Christ returns, they will receive, they will claim all the land that Abraham had promised.
Revelation 17 to 18 is talking about the final destruction of
Yeah.
religious Babylon and political Babylon.
Yes, yes. Well, like I said, when we got into Daniel, talking about the statue of the, and then the light, the thick was mixed with steel and iron clay, and it was destroyed. And so Jeremiah announced that when God restored his people, one would look for an iniquity in Israel, there would be none. God would not only rescue his people, but cleanse them spiritually. The word iniquity denotes evil or wickedness. But whomever may seek to bring his this upon Israel will not succeed. We see that today. I always think a reminder of the 6-day war. Remember that 6-day war we went against Israel, we went to Egypt? Israel didn't stand a chance when they defeated them in 6 days. I always remember that somebody said, the general was Diane. I think his last name, Christian Diane. He was the general that led that fight against Egypt.
Jefferson Moshe and Moses.
Yeah. I didn't know that. But I heard someone say after he led the defeat, against Egypt, someone said that we're going to make a deal, the United States, with Israel. And he said, we're going to take how many destroyer ships, how many tanks, how many fighter jets, and McNamara for Diane. All that trade just to get him. You get to one. McNamara was the Secretary of Defense at the time. But I thought, well, that sounds like a pretty good trade. But anyway, the word iniquity, like I said, the word iniquity denotes evil or wickedness, but whomever may seek to bring this upon Israel will not succeed. I think it would be more than just not succeeding. I think it would be great defeat. Jeremiah said the sins of Judah will will not be found. And he said he would not remember their sin. This has got to be looking at the Messianic time. That Israel, I think to me this is saying that it tells me that Israel is still God's chosen. Some say, no, that's no longer. And even I've heard some say the United States is the new Israel. God forbid if it is. Amen. And
Think of replacement theology and flattery going a whole lot of scripture.
yes, a lot of scripture. Yes, I think a lot of scripture. And like I said, Will, listen, I forget his name, Jeremiah, or the one I'm talking about. I was thinking about when Christ returns. I mean, well, the tribulation, the 144,000 missionary, evangelists that will, and that's still to come. And that's when we'll see, I think, a restoration of Israel is this time. And but then, like I said, I think we're speaking here, or Jeremiah is to God, is we're speaking of Messianic time, the time when Christ will return. Someone read down verses 33 through 34.
Thus saith the Lord, as the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captive helped fast. They refused to let them go. Their Redeemer is strong. The Lord of hosts is the name. He shall thoroughly flee after the cause, that he may give rest to the land and disquiet the inhabitants of Babylon.
God noted that all of God's people were oppressed, including those in Israel and Judah. God's people had received unjust treatment, but the Lord had warned them he would judge them if they abandoned him. But he also promised to judge Assyria and Babylon for their foolishness. The beginning of Israel and Judah was not left off the hook. God's judgment came upon them because of their refusal to worship him. But they refused, but he also brought the ones that God used to bring judgment on them. He brought judgment on them, Assyria and Babylon. They had refused to let his people go. But God was stronger than any of his people's captors who would redeem them. That's how we need to remember. God is stronger than any of our captors. Anyone who's sin is captive, is trying to hold us captive. God is stronger. And he would redeem us.
Isn't it interesting in modern times? I heard a lot of people saying, well, God can't use that person because they're not a believer. Yet here he is using whole nations that are not believers.
Yes. I had someone, and they're not here now, this has been several years ago, brought up in class that the Holy Spirit wasn't at work in the Old Testament. Well, the Holy Spirit was at work right there.
You never read Genesis chapter 1?
No, I guess not. But, the Trinity has always been eternity past, so I would use the word forever and ever. So Jesus provided the ultimate redemption when he rescued us from our sins of condemnation, so we could become God's children. Two results would come from God's intervention. First, he would give rest to the land. God was about to end the suffering by bringing his people rest from its oppression. Second, he would bring turmoil to the inhabitants of Babylon. After being conquered by the Medes and Persians, King Cyrus liberated the exiles in Babylon to return to their home. I find it strange, but 70,000 returned. And really, I don't know how many were there at the time, but that's not a whole lot. A lot of them chose to stay. I don't know what happened to them, but 70,000 did return. We read the story of Ezra and Nehemiah. They came back and rebuilt the temple and the walls, and they were given free reign. They did run into problems. They had, while some worked, they had their bows next to them. So now at the bar, yes. You know, they said, well, we're gonna come help. No,
They tried every,
tried
everything.
everything. Anyway, any other comments? We have about a few minutes.
Billy took her medicine on this morning,
Oh, gosh.
so she's,
Libby,
and,
got a driver, they drive her
well,
home.
Butch is taking her home, but she won't let us call in. The Butch may call her.
Call her anyway. That's her daughter.
She said, I'll text her when I get home.
Yeah. Okay,
Well, they have her number now, so
okay. Anyway, I think the number I had was an old one.
I don't know, that's what I gave them.
Okay, they'll find out. Anyway. But then let her up, yes.
Yeah, I've been in that whole, Iraq,
Yeah,
the whole region. And I don't know why anybody lives there anyway.
yeah.
It's a desert.
It's a desert, yes.
From Nineveh all the way to Baghdad.
Mhm.
It's just really
Yeah,
terrible place.
Not nice.
yeah.
But the people who live there, they like it.
Yeah, I guess so. They'll each their
I
own.
guess we're really.
I mean, when I was working in West Texas the first time, I thought, yeah, why would anybody want to live here? But after working there for a while, it grows on you. We love it. We love it in West Texas.
Needed.
What?
I got you then.
I did. Well, we did. Yeah,
It's too
I
long
did.
too, I didn't.
Huh?
That's what Bill said too, I didn't.
Well, I've heard people say when the military were transferred to El Paso, cried when they went out there and cried when they left. Yeah.
I cried that and go back.
Yeah. Like I said, each their own. Like I said, it was, when we went to Sanderson, we were, I think we were welcomed. I think it's because we were not, because nobody moved there. And I said one time, I said, to a co-worker, friend, I said, people have to be pretty rough and tough to settle this country. He said, no, they were running from the law. I think there's a lot of truth to that, too. I was telling him, I think the dentist the other day, I said, some places in West Texas I work, the only difference between the law and the crook was a badge. And that was in several places like I saw that. But they were crooks, but they didn't hide it. If there's a crook, they'd tell you there's a crook. So any other comments? Okay, Brother Greg, could you dismiss this?
Gracious Father, Dad, we do thank you for the opportunity to be in your house. Lord, we can always make them out, we can always stand, we can always do honor and praise you. It's just like some more practice. Lord God, we thank you so much. For the men, the brothers, sisters in Christ, may this each other up, may we be a shining light. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.